Hi all, welcome to week one of legal aspects of kinesiology. Here we are with our home page. I wanted to direct you to our chapter one and two overview. You can find the materials for, for this video. You'll locate it here in the learning activities underneath week one. So when you click on week one, there will be a video just like you see here with week 0 for the intro video. Inside week 1, you will see the overview video, and then below it we'll have the lecture video here, which is what you're watching now. So what I want to bring to your attention are 3 reading sources for this week. There's chapter 1, chapter 2, and the standard of care PDF. For the lectures, I'm basically just going to do like a brief overview. I'm not going to do a very lengthy lecture because basically what you should be doing is getting into the reading material and then reviewing the PowerPoints. So I'm going to show you the first couple PowerPoints. You'll notice on the PowerPoints that there are some slides that are blocked, or they've been, X'd down or whatever, or hidden. That just basically means that the other slides, the ones that are showing, are the ones I want you to pay attention to, and that's what the quiz material is going to be based off of, and the learning objectives for each week. So this first chapter is just kind of an overview on the U.S. legal system. I've hidden the chapter objectives, but you can kind of just see what the point of this chapter is to understand the U.S. legal system, understand the process of federal and state court systems, different types of law in the U.S., and then some legal resources. So just kind of briefly, again, I'm not going to go very in depth with this. I just wanted to give you an overview. So in this chapter, the sources of U.S. law that are discussed are the English common law, constitutional law, which constitutional law is derived from the U.S. Constitution, statutory law, and then administrative law. So some different examples you're going to see in here. The common law is just dating back to medieval England. Basically, it's the primary legal system for most English-speaking nations. It's kind of like what set up the court system and trial and so forth. Constitutional law, that is derived from the U.S. Constitution and our state constitutions. Basically, it organizes the balance of powers and basically the statute and the ruling of the court, and how administrative processes work in the legal system. So as it says here, it's the bedrock to our legal system. Then came along statutory law, which basically was enacted by the state and federal legislatures. So there's there's statutes and there's ordinances, which together make up the statutory law. There's some examples of statutory law. So like Title IX is a common one. So equal right for men and women in sports. These are the ones that particularly apply to sports, so they're of greatest interest to most of you. Disability Act, and then Immunity Act. And there's some other ones that are kind of popping up in today's day and age, which are kind of interesting due to gender differences and so forth. Then there's, of course, administrative law. Look at organizations such as the IRS, OSA, which impacts us now with the whole COVID-19 pandemic. And then goes over different types of law, so criminal law versus civil law. What is a lawsuit, plaintiff versus the defendant. Jury trial, non-jury trial. These are pretty self-explanatory. You're probably familiar with a lot of them. I've hidden the court systems. I mean, this is just information that you can look through, the U.S. court, trial courts, and so forth. So that basically makes up this chapter. There's some legal resources at the end. In the textbook, there's more resources for you to look at if you desire to do so, and I also provide that PDF in the chapter 1 or the week 1 module. I'm going to open up the chapter 2. Chapter 2 is looking at tort law and product liability. tort law is kind of interesting because it's looking at um, different causes of action, so types of lawsuits that take place. Um, the ones that are important for us to understand, especially in sports admin and the sports realm, is negligence, so who's at fault, um, intentional torts, so intent or desire to you know um, for there to be harm done, or if there was an intent for someone to do something bad. And then product liability, that's just looking at liability of products that we use, and that's a big one for athletics because there's a lot of clauses when you buy a product that it states that if you use it improperly, that you can't sue the company that made it because you were at fault, or just knowing that there's risk involved, especially with like weightlifting and things like that. There's an inherent risk, so product liability only comes into play if the product fails and causes harm. So this involves civil, not criminal actions, which is important to understand. Yeah, so a big thing with the tort law is just understanding the burden of proof. So there has to be evidence for it to go to trial. Negligence is a big one to understand. Basically, when someone's injured, if it's due to you not handling the situation properly, that's big for coaching. Understanding that you can put your athletes at risk, especially in the weight room, if you are not supervising them well or preparing them well, or you do something to basically put them in harm's way. So big things here: standard of care, breach of duty, causation, and then injury. So damage is done. And then determine standard of care, some different procedures that you can look at for how legislation takes place and how things go to trial and how they're processed. Yeah, some other things about negligence. I'm going to skip through a lot of this. A lot of it's hidden anyways. Intentional torts, so physical, emotional, reputation, different types of harm that can be done to others. Elements of battery, if battery takes place, so intentional harm or unintentional. Yeah, and then there's some discussion about the infliction of emotional distress, which is kind of interesting. How our role as coaches can actually be impacted by emotional distress. Right to privacy is a big one. It says it's a very broad tort, which basically means that there's a broad area that comes into play with the Privacy Acts. And the last thing to take a look at is, of course, the product liability. And this one's interesting because it discusses how there's a liability for harm that's caused by a consumer of the product. So there is an association of liability by both the manufacturer but also those using the product. And so there's some fine print involved with these cases. And you will see some case studies with these, which are kind of interesting to take a look at in the text. Again, the elements that go into this are same as the negligence with the other cases. With the tort law is standard of care, breaches of the standard, causation, and then damages. Yep. Last thing it looks at is product liability, so the role of warranties. And you'll see warranties on a lot of products. Warranty does impact how the product is covered, and then that can impact a lawsuit against the product as well. All right, so that is basically the first two chapters that you should take a look at. Of course, dive into the reading. There's more case studies that go along with this, and then the standard of care PDF that's provided on there as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via email. Otherwise, the next step is to take your quiz once you've gotten through the reading, and then work on Cap 1. Make sure you dive into this and select a case that is related to your chosen career path. All right, talk to you all soon. Bye for now.